Hi everyone, Sabrina here with yet another book review. Yeah, I finished 2 books in the last week. Yay me! West of Eden was on my December TBR. This was a book that I started back in August and I had a third of the way to go and had to finish it. So that was the 3 bus journeys to finish it off and a couple of stints in front of the telly. It's amazing what you can read when there's absolutely nothing on the telly. So West of Eden is written by Harry Harrison. It's the first book in his Eden trilogy, and some of the reviews on Goodreads really don't get this series. It is a look at the conflict that can arise from 2 different groups of people who have everything in common but cannot see past their differences. Sound familiar? There's a group called the Tanu who are our Homo sapien ancestors. They're not quite Homo sapiens, but they're not far off. And then we have the Ilani, who are a evolved group of reptiles. They're the ones that have developed the technology. They've created cities. They have a civilization. They effectively have taken the place of the human race. And the Tanu are still hunter-gatherers. They still are a nomadic tribes of people and have a very simple way of life and just want to exist. And these 2 groups of individuals meet, and it don't go well at all. And the whole book stems from that initial conflict and the desire of both species to completely eradicate the other. We follow most of the storyline through Carrick, a young boy who's kidnapped and taken prisoner by the Ilani very early on in his life. He's brought up to learn their language, their way of life, their culture, their religion, their belief system. But he's effectively a pet slave, a novelty in a world full of reptiles. The Ilani are a female-dominated society. And like any society, there are good and there are bad in there. And unfortunately, this group of Ilani we meet are led by a pretty horrible piece of work, which is a shame because they could have done so much good had another character been in charge. But again, this does kind of show how, a species is not just one person. There are lots of variations within a species, and there are good and bad to a species. Are you seeing the parallels yet? Yes, Harry Harrison wrote this back in the 60s. This was his pet project, and he was already writing about discrimination, but putting it in a sci-fi setting, which some people completely seem to have missed here. Carrick does manage to escape and meet up with the Tanu and discover that actually that's what he is. But he kind of straddles both sides of the conflict because obviously he's been brought up as Ilani, but he's a Tanu and he learns their side and their culture and that. So he can sort of become this mediator between the 2. Unfortunately, it's not allowed to happen like that because of the Ilani leader. And she's out for blood. And there are Tanu hunters who are also out for blood. And when you're faced with 2 sides that will not sit down and talk to each other, conflict is going to arise. A lot of this story is about survival. It is extremely well crafted. There is so much detail. The world building is amazing. There's actually appendices at the back here that have got all the beasts that are mentioned, the different languages, how each group has developed over the years. And there's so much information. I mean, this is almost the Lord of the Rings of the sci-fi world for the sheer amount of detail in that. Each group have their own language and it's very distinctive. The Tanu sound very guttural to the Ilani. The Ilani use hand gestures and tail signals as well to talk with, so they're very a physical language on top of that, and their body can actually change colour as well according to their emotions and moods, so that's very cool. The Ilani also can't lie, and it's really interesting seeing how some of those characters get around that little fact, whereas obviously the Tanu can lie. I love this book, I really did. I will be reading the rest of the trilogy, and it's very much a breakdown of what happens when just 2 sides will not get on with each other and how you survive that. And it was fascinating to read, actually. And this is the first time I think I've actually come across a group that are so alien to everything we know. The Ilani are like nothing else. I mean, even the Tanu to a degree are very different to most books that we read. A lot of our books where we read about Neanderthals and the early Homo sapiens have them in a certain way. I think the Tanu are different from those groups of humanity. I know some feminists will go, oh, it's not fair, you know, you've got a masculine society in the Tanyu, and you've got a female society who are the Alani, and they're the bad guys. No, it's not about that. As I said, both sides have bad and good people. Both sides make bad choices and good choices. You know, this is not male against female. This is one group against another group. There is good to both sides. There is bad to both sides. It's not a them or us. But I really enjoyed it. Trigger warning, there's a rape scene. Some people will laugh and go, oh yeah, it's a interspecies rape scene, but it's still a rape scene, however you want to look at it. So trigger warning for that. There is violence, gore, and it's on page. It's not excessive, but it's on the page. It's nice and clean, you know, entrails are mentioned. So I think they're the big two trigger warnings. It's just a fascinating read about how our world could have developed very, very differently, and how we look at people who are different from us. It really is one of those books where you sit and you just, oh yeah, it's that big theme underneath in a sci-fi trapping. And like I say, the best sci-fi looks at our own social situations and explores them in a different situation, that's all. And that's what West of Eden does. If you have read West of Eden and have spoiler-free thoughts, please leave them down below. As always, in the description box are links to my Twitter, Goodreads and Instagram, my book blog, the Social Bubble magazine that's online. I'll leave a link to that for you as well, so you can go check that out. And Booktubers that I think you should go and support, because algorithm sucks. As always, thank you very much for watching, and happy reading. Be well.